Chronicles of a Gooner. Like and subscribe. Chronicles of a Gooner. Harry, send me you time. Arsenal. Come on, you gunners. Arsenal. Chronicles of a Gooner.
This podcast is brought to you in partnership with okjersey.com. Looking for football shirts? Head over to okjersey.com and enter the discount code Harry for 8% off. Hey everybody, how's it going? And welcome back to another episode of the Chronicles of a Gooner podcast with me, your host, Harry Symeou. I'm delighted to say we've got one of the old school back on the show, back on the channel. It's like a 90-min reunion. I'm delighted to say Scott Saunders is with me to look ahead to Arsenal versus Manchester United this weekend. Scott, how's it going, mate?
Good, man. I'm looking forward to this weekend. Always a pleasure to talk to you. And we don't do this enough. So I would love you to maybe come on my podcast maybe next week as well after this game plays out. But it's absolutely a pleasure to be on. Good to talk. Like, things going well for you, on for like everything at the moment, and my season has turned around slightly in the last week or so as well. So better position than I've been in for the last year or so. So excited to talk.
We did some work together earlier in the week, and there was a spring in Scott's step after Manchester United's victory over City, and obviously it was a victory that benefited us as well. That doesn't change the fact that Manchester United are still, for me, among our biggest rivals, and this game will always have an edge and it'll always have a bit of needle, and maybe younger Arsenal and Manchester United fans don't fully appreciate actually what this game means to old timers like us. But this is a huge game, isn't it? Like there's no getting away from it.
It's what we grew up with, really, like through the 90s. I don't really remember what it was like before Wenger came in because I was a little bit too young. But when Wenger came in and you had Ferguson throwing shade at him from where he'd been and where he'd worked previously, that was like 96, right? 96, 97, around that time. Yeah. And then, you know, United were winning leagues and they didn't really have like a tangible, like proper rival. And then Arsenal won the league in like 98. And then it was like, oh, they're doing things differently. And it just developed from there. And then you go back into like the mid 2000s and pizza being thrown at Alex Ferguson and that kind of stuff. The unbeaten record coming to an end at Old Trafford, Arsenal winning the league at United, and like lots of good stuff. And it's nice. I would like to see both of them, you know, back at their peak levels. I think Arsenal may be getting back there now. United a bit behind, but yeah, storied, big rivalry this.
Absolutely. And it is important, I think, for the Premier League that Arsenal and Manchester United are in a good place. And as much as I'm not going to lie, I enjoy watching Man United struggle. I enjoy all the discourse. I love the fact that every time the smallest thing happens, it becomes a major story. And I would, because we're rivals, right? But it kind of reminds me of sort of a little bit about what Arsenal went through. And I would hold my hands up and say that for Man United, it's probably even bigger. There's probably even more scrutiny. But it just reminds me of kind of where we were a few years ago, where every little thing was a crisis. Every little issue was turned into a big deal. Manchester United obviously had to move on from Ruben Amorim. I think, you know, and I'll get your take on this actually. Was it a case of Man United having to move on from Ruben Amorim at the point he went, do you think?
I think with what he said publicly, I think, yeah, for me, I've been sat here for most of the season watching terrible football and thinking, let's just get to the end of the season and see what they can achieve. Because I didn't think they would end up sacking him. But obviously when things happen behind the scenes, and then he definitely made a point of, I can't work in this anymore. I'm going to go and definitely say what I want to say before I end up leaving. He might have probably known that he was going to be sacked the next day after Leeds. But to me, you mentioned there the similarities between what Arsenal have been through. And I think there are similarities as well with what United are going through. And I've wanted them to stand by a manager or a head coach to rid themselves of the cultural problems that I always think come back around and bite them in the backside. But I think in terms of my immediate happiness, there's no doubt I'm happier now. But I do worry in the long term, again, like, will we find ourselves in the same position? The good thing is the structure's changed. And even while they haven't got well, they got most decisions wrong, let's be honest. So don't have entire faith in that at the moment. But yeah, you need to stick at it. And Arsenal stuck at it and shown to me, like, that's how you do a rebuild, you know?
Yeah, and I think, to sort of touch on the rebuild point, it's not even just about Mikel Arteta. I think if you go back 4 or 5 years, Arsenal as a football club, once they'd come out of that kind of period where stabilization was required, where you had to clean house, you had to get rid of the likes of Aubameyang and others that, were good players in their own right, but maybe weren't the right people in terms of what was necessary at that time, moving in a different direction, refreshing things, etc. Once we got past that stage, it feels like Arsenal committed to winning the league. They went, we need to get back to the very top of the Premier League. And obviously we haven't won it yet. So there will be people out there that say, as of now, Arsenal have not completed the job. They haven't completed the task. And I agree with that, right? There's still a lot of work to be done. I'm not that guy that's sitting here in January saying we're Premier League champions. I think that's way too premature. I think it's silly to fall into that trap. I think there has to be some protection against complacency. But Arsenal a few years ago went, we need to get back to the top. And we're going to do that. We're going to commit to that. And that means spending money. It means spending money at times on players that didn't work out and having to spend money again to rectify that. But as a collective and as a club, they've all been pushing in the right direction. And that's why you see Arsenal where they're at today. Obviously, Mikel Arteta has played a huge role in that. But I think it's the collective, it's the ambition of the club that's got them to where they are today. I don't want to sort of pee on your parade, Scott, but I still worry.
Go for it if you want.
I still worry when it comes to Man United that ambition to get right back to the very top is still not there within the club. And that's not necessarily on the manager. Like, what manager doesn't want to win? What manager doesn't want to succeed and enhance his own reputation? But is there a bit of concern on your part that, yeah, the manager's changed and Carrick's come in and raised kind of the positivity levels and got that result, but you've still got Sir Jim Ratcliffe there, who I don't rate at all, by the way, in terms of taking the club in the right direction and some of his decision making. And still, the Glazers are a big part of it. So is there a part of you that's afraid of sort of getting carried away because you know that they're there and they might end up showing that same face again?
I think that worry that I do have isn't based on what they want to achieve. I think it's more based on like cultural problems that tend to rear their head every now and again. Like Carrick's come in and started brilliantly with the first game that he's been in. He'll have the next 16 games. If he does really well, people will be like really high and hoping that United are going in the right direction again, only for like managers come in and you get an immediate reaction out of the players. And then, it kind of tails off. And I do worry about that happening again. In terms of the ambition, I think I'm one of the smaller minority, I guess. I'm having to trust in words at the moment, right? If I want to enjoy football or like trust in where the club is going, I do think the difference now is with the people that are running the club, even though they've made big decisions, got them wrong on Ashworth, Ten Hag, and now Ruben Amorim as well. Like those decisions are unquestionably wrong and have made them look stupid. Their messaging is that we want to win I don't know if you've seen this, we want to win the league by 2028, the 150th anniversary. Now that's probably not going to happen as it looks, but things can change around pretty quick. And if United get Champions League this season and then add on top of that, then maybe that things are different next season. But I think the one big change for me, the Glazers, to me, Ed Woodward said once when he was in charge, it doesn't really matter what we do on the pitch. Our commercial viability is never going to be affected by that. And I think that was the attitude in charge of the club, 10 years ago, 5 years ago, potentially. What's changed now is I think at least they're putting forward the ideals and the ambition that we do want to win the league. Not everybody trusts in that. I do. I just think we're in a period now where United have been hemorrhaging money for so long that all of the decisions they've made are terrible now, but for the benefit of the club long term. That's how I'm feeling. So I'm giving them a lot of leeway for now.
I kind of get where you're coming from though, because for me, I remember when sort of KSE took over full sort of control of Arsenal. At the beginning, I wasn't convinced, right? And obviously, then there was the whole Super League debacle, and everybody sort of came out up in arms, furious about it. There were huge protests outside Emirates Stadium. There was this thing started called We Care Do You, where loads of fan groups and sort of podcasters and whatnot all got together and sort of put this message to the club. We care. Do you? Do you actually care about where this club is going? And that felt like a bit of a turning point. So I'm not going to sit here and say there's no chance of Manchester United turning it around, or that you should always be cynical of, what their intentions are and all the rest of it. But that point that you made about enjoying football, you have to enjoy football. Otherwise, what the hell is the point? I've been there where I've been so low because of football, because of where my team was at. And I don't know, maybe it's as I've gotten older and I've sort of looked at it in a sort of more mature way, and I've realized that football is important, but it is the most important of the least important things, as was once famously said. You kind of look at that and you go, if I don't enjoy this, then what the hell am I doing? And so why shouldn't you give people the benefit of the doubt and try and see things from a more positive angle? At least that's how I see it now. And I get a lot of stick, and I'm sure you do as well, from fans of our clubs who go, you're just being positive. You're just sort
toxic
of
positivity, or
toxic positivity. There's all sorts of names going around for that. And yeah, maybe at times I am guilty of wanting to see the positive side of something, but that's just the way that I choose to consume football. And I think it's important that people, when they can, and there are certain situations where you can't, right? There are certain things that you can't turn a blind eye to. But when your team is top of the league like ours is, when your team is top of the Champions League like ours is, and you're still looking for negatives, then I think you've probably got a problem. So, you got to enjoy football. You got to enjoy it. Carrick's impact was big, wasn't it, last weekend? And obviously, as I mentioned, he done us a favor, but that has meant that we're probably a little bit more nervous about this game had we would have been under Ruben Amorim. Talk us through what he changed in your opinion, because I was having this conversation with Flex the other day, and for me, there were multiple changes. Nothing exactly groundbreaking though. Does it show that Ruben Amorim was getting it really horribly wrong in the end?
Look, in terms of the players that he had and the personnel that he had and what he was trying to, do, yes, like there's no doubt about that. But I hark back to the conversation we just had. I think there's a bigger thing at United in a cultural sense that needs to change. And there's one, I was more patient with Amorim than a lot of people, even through all the misery and the terrible results, because I thought there was a destination he was trying to get to. And look, the things that he said, the way he went about things was wrong. Like some of the stuff he said, bringing young players into and criticizing them for no reason. Like you just can't really do that. And it doesn't wash, especially at United. But I saw it in two ways. He wasn't maximizing what he had, but I always thought his job was to imprint and regenerate the squad in like an image of like really hard work and making sure that they run. I remember when United played Arsenal at the Emirates in the FA Cup last year in one of his first games, and I saw them all running back to defend a counter-attack in the 90th minute. And I thought, oh my God, they're running like dogs, is what he said, right? And that's what he wanted to see. Eventually that tailed off and it didn't work in the end. So what Carrick has done immediately is lean into the strengths of his players, and undoubtedly they already look better. I do have a worry though with that in the long term, is if you lean into those players too much, you giving the power to the players, and if they decide they don't want it anymore down the line, is that going to put United back where they were at the start? They've got to get a real hold of that culturally. I've talked about it a bunch of times already. And just, I think you mentioned Ratcliffe there. Sorry to jump back to this, but no, I don't think he's in this personally to make money out of this. I think he can make money in other walks of life, in different businesses. I do think, I believe what he says, that he actually wants to bring United back to the top. So I don't really understand why he would be there otherwise. It doesn't make sense to do this for money. But yeah, in terms of what Carrick has done, he's definitely made them a more viable threat, like instantly, for this Arsenal game. And it'll be a good test of him. what you say in terms of the basics, yeah, I agree with you. Really, I don't think he's done anything groundbreaking yet. But the big test for him will be, obviously, this is not a game that people are expecting United to win because of how good Arsenal have been. But it's potential bonus for points if they can pick up a draw or something like that. Then that'll be considered a good result. The test for Carrick will be down the line when I think Fulham are next weekend at Old Trafford, and then you got Tottenham at home. Can you beat teams like that and have relatively little trouble, especially with like Fulham, teams that you're expected to beat? Can you beat them? That's been the problem for United. But yeah, feeling a bit better about it. So we'll see how it goes this weekend.
How do you think he's going to approach the game on Sunday? Because obviously against Manchester City, you were at home. He probably, and obviously I don't know what he said behind the scenes, but my assumption would be that he sort of said, look at Manchester City. They're quite fragile defensively at the moment. They've got a makeshift centre-back pairing. It's nowhere near the level of their, first choice centre-back pairing. Get at them, have a go at them. You're at home. The Old Trafford crowd will be behind you. And we're in a place where, we've been struggling generally in comparison. That's why our manager's just gone, or it's part of why our manager's just gone. Let's go and sort of restore some pride and have a real go at them. But Arsenal, and you won't mind me saying this, and yes, I'm a little bit biased, of course I am. Arsenal don't have those fragilities. Arsenal are not as vulnerable as Manchester City were, and I'm not taking anything away from Man United, but they're not as vulnerable as City were when they turned up last weekend. So if you're Carrick, what do you do? Do you say more of the same, or do you try and rein it in a little bit? If you do that, is there a danger that you're kind of taken away from what was positive last weekend? Like, what do you think he's approaching, and maybe what would your approach look like?
I think it is more of the same, personally. But I do agree with you. I think Arsenal are not going to be easy to get at all. I think what United will probably find this weekend is that Arsenal will dominate territory a lot better than City will. And I think even City, like they pushed United in, hemmed them in at times where they never really had a threat. And I know that Arsenal are struggling with certain aspects, and there's a lot of hearsay about set piece goals, and I think that is a massive worry. Like against any team that Arsenal play, they have to be thinking, like, how do we stop these set pieces? Like we spoke the other day, the game at Old Trafford, United gave a really good account of themselves, and Arsenal won off the back of a set piece. And thank God we don't have Andre Onana in goal anymore. It's just, or Altay Bayindir for that matter. So I'm a little bit safer in hope that Lamans will deal with those instances better. But Arsenal are so good at set pieces that you just think it's a matter of time really before they end up scoring. In terms of how they approach it, they have to stay tight. They have to condense the space and frustrate Arsenal to a degree and still carry that threat on the break. It's just I don't know how effective it will be against Arsenal, because I think I watched the game against Villa. I know you beat Villa a few weeks ago, like handsomely in the end, but in the first half especially, there were moments where Villa had the ability to transition through midfield and carried the ball, and like they exploited Arsenal at times. Arsenal won the game comfortably in the end, but it's maybe that blueprint that United have to make sure that they get right. And look, I'll take a draw now. I would take a draw now. If they can sit in and maybe nick a goal or show threat on the break, while Arsenal might deal with it better, there's still a chance. If United go about the way that they play with the same attitude as last weekend and the same energy. So I would expect muchly the same. I've got to be honest.
Yeah, and I think that's right. I don't think that you should go there and say all those amazing things we did last week, especially if you're trying to restore the confidence of a group of players. I don't think you should go there and say, undo everything that we did last weekend and sit back and soak up, because eventually, more often than not, Arsenal do find a way through. I know you alluded to it there. People are critical of Arsenal in open play at times. People talk about Arsenal's struggles to open certain low blocks up, but ultimately Arsenal are finding a way, hence why they are top of the league and in the position that they are. And if that's from set pieces, then so be it. Just a quick plug for the Patreon pod that we put out yesterday where we talked about set pieces. I highlighted, in my opinion, what the kind of three key principles are to Arsenal set pieces and why they're so difficult to stop, and how those specific things, I'm not going to give them away because then you won't go over to Patreon and have a listen. But I talked about how those things are actually really, really difficult to stop, even if you know what they're doing. So go over to Patreon, check that out, patreon.com/the Chronicles of Aguna. Check it out. But yeah, I think Arsenal will eventually feel that they can find a way. And what I've liked about Arsenal this season is at times that as fans, we've gone in at halftime really anxious and we're like, oh, low block, can't find a way through. But we've been patient, generally speaking, and we wear people down. You know, if you have a lot of the ball and people are chasing shadows, they get tired. And tiredness doesn't just lead to not keeping up with someone pace-wise. It can mean you switch off for a second and someone can get in. Where I think Man United could have joy, actually, is that if Arsenal don't score in the first half, let's say, and it goes into the second half, you're going to start to see Arsenal take more risks. You're going to start to see the fullbacks going into different positions. They normally do this from the start anyway, but you're going to see it become a little bit more aggressive because Arsenal at home will feel the onus is on them to go out and win this game. Man City are going to beat Wolves. I think they're playing Wolves, aren't they, on Saturday? So they're going to feel the onus is on them to go and win it. And that extra bit of aggression could leave the kind of spaces that Man United can expose. I think if I was Carrick, I'd be going there and I'd be saying first half an hour, you shut them down, you lock them down. And there will be spaces to run through in that midfield if Arsenal push Declan Rice really high, because then that leaves Martin Zubimendi as the kind of lone defensive midfielder. And as great as I think he is on the ball, he's not the most physical. He's not the most powerful. And there's a vulnerability there, I suppose. So, yeah, I think if you're Man United, that's the way that you approach it. Look, we're going to take a really, really, really short pause. And then when we come back, we're going to continue to break down how we think this game is going to go. We'll discuss starting 11s maybe, what Scott thinks Man United's team is going to look like. I'll share with you what my Arsenal team will look like. I'm not going to try and guess Arteta's because it's just impossible to do. So we'll take a short pause and we'll be back in just a second.
You're listening to the Chronicles of a Gooner. Like and subscribe.
That's right. You're listening to the Chronicles of a Gooner. Like, subscribe if you're with us on YouTube. If you're listening to us on Apple or Spotify, please do leave us a review and make sure you check us out on Patreon as well. Come on then, let's talk starting 11, Scott. How do you think Man United will line up? Will it be the same or do you envisage any changes?
I think he will go similar, to be honest. I think Patrick Dorgu's been a big surprise for people over the last few weeks.
Yeah, for sure.
You know, and I was surprised a little bit to see that he started in the derby last week ahead of Cunha. But then I think width is quite important at times. And what we have seen out of Dorgu recently, like the Burnley game, he gave an assist for Benjamin Sesko, which was really good and really positive. And you could see him the other day scoring in the derby as well. He just has that ability to hold width a bit more, and that out ball, and the option, like you saw when United counterattacked and Mbeumo scored that goal, but there was Ahmad on the one side and Dorgu on the other, holding the width and with the energy to get up and down. I think that was a really good part of United's game. Look, I think I say stay the same because it worked last week. I think the approach in this game will probably be similar, but I also look at the bench as well. And United have had problems over the last few weeks with players absent and injuries, but they seem to have, I think Joshua Zirkzee missing this one, unless the team news is any different today, and De Ligt's missing this one as well. Like if De Ligt was fit, you know, I think you could really do with him for the aerial threat and the aerial ability that he will have to deal. As it stands, I don't think he's fit. So I would think it'll be the same. But the big thing for me, and you're talking there, if United can hold it tight and can stop Arsenal scoring in the first half, United do have options off the bench, and Cunha's a good option. Sesko is an option that I think I'm excited to see utilized in this Michael Carrick version of United as well. I wouldn't necessarily start him from the beginning because, you know, Arsenal centre-back pair, and you pretty much... They're strong, they're physical, and you would expect them to be able to deal. So maybe you need to go with an Mbeumo and maybe do something a little bit different from the start. But I think the options from the bench, if United can hold this game at 0-0 or level up until 60 minutes or into the last half an hour, you do have options to change the game. And if Arsenal are pushing on to win, it may be one of those that opens up and you can use your bench options to maybe decide the game or get back into it a little bit later on. So that's how I'd approach it personally.
Yeah, and I think this idea that, you know, and Mikel Arteta gets mocked for it, doesn't he? Starters versus finishers. And bringing certain people on when the game state is right for them and for their skill set. I think it's really, really important nowadays, in a day and age where you can basically change half of your outfield team from your bench. But your point there about width and Dorgu, I think, is really, really important. And this is where I will give Michael Carrick some sort of tactical credit, because I said that the things he did I thought were quite simple. That was one that was somebody thinking outside the box, credit where credit's due. And I think what he's done there is he's looked at Manchester City and Arsenal set up in a really similar way when they're in possession. So this is probably applicable and transferable from that game to this one. When Arsenal or Manchester City pin you back in your own half and they are dominating possession, when they lose the ball, you'll very often find that they're set up with two centre-backs and then the defensive midfielder sitting in front of the two centre-backs. It's very narrow. And so if your out ball is a central out ball, so if, for example, your out ball was Benjamin Sesko and you go to hit him in the middle of the park, then that's going to get eaten up by Gabriel and Saliba. The way that you buy your team time to get up the pitch is you hit the flanks. When you get the ball back deep, the out ball needs to be a wide one so that it takes everybody, it gives that player the opportunity, I beg your pardon, to bring the ball under control. And that gets your team up the pitch in that meantime. So I think that's really, really important. And I think Dorgu, is he the most technically brilliant player out there? Maybe not, but physically he's very, very good. He's a very strong runner. He's got a great engine. And I think Man United can really benefit from using him in that way. Does that make sense? Like, your out ball should be a wide ball, shouldn't it?
Yeah, that's what I look at, really. And that's, for me, like that's why I said about Sesko, I wouldn't necessarily start him, because you're up against like Gabriel and Saliba, who is like by far and away the best centre-back pairing, I think, in the Premier League and possibly Europe as well. That you don't really want to go up against that. You want to try and find the spaces that Arsenal don't necessarily cover. And I think Dorgu, I would probably start him again simply because of the width option, because of his ability to carry, because of his ability to run, but also his, he's been playing left wing back for a while. So it's automatically like ingrained in him about those defensive responsibilities as well. And I think you will get an honest shift out of him. That's something that he does bring. And you could probably use that. What United did last week, and probably need to do this again against, Saka especially, is, hey, make sure that you get back in and you double up on him, because he can have Luke Shaw on toast, And they need to try and stem Arsenal's threats. I just look at him and like, they're all over the pitch. Don't get me wrong. But I just look at Saka and I always think, we said about the other day, the way that he can go one way or go down the other way and like get to the byline is a big concern. So United's wingers and their attacking options out wide do need to make sure that they do their defensive work as well. Otherwise, the game can get away from United pretty fast.
Yeah, absolutely. In terms of how Arsenal are going to line up, I don't see there being too many changes from the norm, I suppose. I know there was changes made in Milan in midweek, and that's a great sign that you can go to the San Siro with 7 changes and still win as comfortably as Arsenal did in the end. It will be Raya in goal. I think Timber will probably play at right back, Saliba, Gabriel. Obviously, Saliba, I beg your pardon, Gabriel was rested in Milan, came on just for the last 20 minutes or so. Going to be interesting to see what happens at left back. Don't think that Nketiah is going to be back, but if he is, I would bring him in over Miles Lewis-Skelly. I'm not enjoying Miles Lewis-Skelly defensively this season. He's not quite at it at the moment. I don't want to dig him out because he's a young lad, and obviously the way he sort of burst onto the scene, it kind of accelerated everybody's expectations of him when you forget that he's an 18, 19-year-old kid and he's still learning his trade. Was never even a left back during his sort of development as a young footballer. But I'm not really comfortable with him playing at left back. So if Nketiah or Calafiori's back, they might not be. But if one of them is, they would come in for me. The other option is to play Ben White at right back and to use Jurrien Timber at left back, which Mikel's done in recent weeks, I think, out of a lack of trust for Lewis-Skelly defensively. That is an option. But for me, Timber's just a so much more effective player in every aspect of the game when he plays on the right. So that's a decision to make. The midfield, again, there's an interesting debate there. It will be Rice and it will be Zubimendi, but who's the third one? Odegaard didn't play very well in the game before last. Eza came in Milan, and I would argue was probably Arsenal's least effective and impactful player. So do you bring him in? You look on the flanks, it could be Trossard or Martinelli. On the right, it will be Saka. And then the big debate that we're all having as Arsenal fans is who plays at centre forward. For me, it will be Gabriel Jesus. But Victor Gyökeres sort of sitting there on the bench the other night, watching Gabriel Jesus essentially score a couple of goals and take his position away from him, then comes on and says, nope, you're not getting away with it that easy. I'm going to go and do what I do and score as well. I'm interested to get your take, Scott, as a non-Arsenal fan, on Victor Gyökeres' start to life at Arsenal, because I've been quite critical of him and I've taken a lot of heat for it. Obviously, I want him to succeed. I just think right now he's an option rather than the option for us.
Yeah, I think people have right to be concerned, like, generally, and I understand why the criticisms come in that way. Like, I think it was pretty much out there, and the intention was you're going to sign a striker and he's going to be the guy that's going to get you your 20 goals to take Arsenal over the line and eventually win. And yeah, I think that it's funny because, like, at the start of the season, we were all, where's Sesko going to go? Where's Gyökeres going to go? Is it going to be the other way around? And, like, I even thought, I think over the summer, that maybe it would make sense if each of them went the other way to, and Sesko went to Arsenal and Gyökeres went to United. In the end, I suppose if I say this, I'm glad it turned out that way and United got Sesko. From my side of things, that maybe tells you all you need to know. But Sesko isn't perfect either. So, look, for me, you look at what Jesus has done. And you remember when, I think it was a couple of seasons ago now, it might have been the 3-1 win that United had at Old Trafford a while ago. And I said to you after that, when Gabby Jesus played, and I thought, wow, like, what he's able to do with the ball. I can't remember if it was that game, but he really impressed me.
Yeah.
Really impressed me in that game. And look, he's had all of his career, really, he's had difficulty with injury and getting, the right run together. But we know what a threat he can be, and we know how he knits things together. So if I was Arsenal, I'd go with Jesus as well. Just on Gyökeres, though, I think what Arsenal need to have really is options and horses for courses, in a sense. Like, if anything, you look at the squad as it is now, it's essentially, I don't know whether you think that they need any more, but it's essentially complete with, like, options in different positions. You've got, when Havertz is fit and available, you got him, you got Jesus, you got Gyökeres, who are like different options at centre forward, and that's only a good thing, really. I think it's just when Gyökeres came in, it was, this is the guy. I don't know if he will ever be the guy, but being an option isn't necessarily a bad thing either. If Arsenal want to go and win Premier League, potentially Champions League as well, you need squad depth and you need different options, and they have lots of them at the moment. So it depends what lens you look at him through, really.
Yeah, I've gone from thinking he might be the guy. It was always might for me, because I was always wary of how that goal tally that he produced in Portugal, which everybody was kind of holding up as the justification for this signing. I was always wary of how that was going to translate into the Premier League. I never thought 40 in Portugal was going to mean 40 in the Premier League. Like, I think you've got to be quite naive, actually, to have ever thought that, really. But one of the points you made there about Jesus was the way that he knits everything together. When Jesus doesn't score, I can forgive it because he gives us a lot more. The way he combines with Martinelli is incredible. The way he can sort of feint and change direction. Like, he's very sharp and switched on all the time. And he just buzzes around and makes things happen. I can then forgive a player not scoring as many goals if he's bringing the best out of those around him. With Victor Gyökeres, I don't feel that's the case. And so I feel like with Gyökeres, it's kind of goals or nothing with him. And people kept talking about, in the early weeks of the season, when they were searching for some reason to kind of praise him, even when we could all clearly see he wasn't playing well. And myself included at times, I fell into this trap of going, but look, he's occupying defenders. That's the bare minimum that a centre forward should do. And what we were doing was holding that up as if it was some kind of justification. Now, at the time, there was no Jesus. He wasn't fit. Kai Havertz has been out from the first weekend of the season. He's back in the picture now, but there are reports that there's some concerns about the reintegration of him, and we've got to be really careful with him. I just think right now you got to go where the iron's hot, and Jesus is playing really, really well at the moment. And I think actually when you watch the Inter game back the other night, Gyökeres came off the bench at a time where the game was stretched, at the time when there was space, and he was effective. And I just wonder if the way that you build Gyökeres up, confidence-wise, belief-wise, is that you hold him back and you use him when you feel like the game state is better suited to his skill set. I'm just wondering if that's the way we need to go, and if that approach to him needs to slightly change in order for us to see him accelerate forward. I don't know. We'll see. We'll see.
Yeah, I mean, just on, I was thinking back to last weekend, right? And United managed to freeze Haaland out of the game. You know, Haaland is not a player that gets involved in the build-up, really. You look at how many touches he had. Teams can do that to City, but look, Haaland's an incredible goal scorer and is amazing, but you know what he's good at, which game states that he thrives in, how he can come alive in certain moments and make a goal out of nothing. But United showed last week that they can freeze him out. So if anything, Arteta would probably look at that and think, maybe I do need an extra option in there who can drop in and maybe knit things together and cause a little bit more difficulty between the two centre-backs, and Kobbie Mainoo and Casemiro, I think, would start in midfield. If you've got an option in between all four of them that's dropping in and you can feed the ball off and he can do what Gabby Jesus does, that's another problem for United to think about. So if I was Arsenal, I would very much go that way. I agree with you.
Yeah, and having the options is great. Having the options is great. That's what Arsenal have been building towards for a number of years. They've assembled a squad now, and I agree with you when you say it's pretty much complete. Like I was thinking about it at the start of January. Do we go out in this window and just add that little bit extra? But then where do you add it? Yeah, exactly. Where do you add it? And this is the issue. Like if we get to a point where a talent like Ethan Nwaneri is being sent out on loan because he can't even get in the squad, then I think that tells me that the squad is strong enough. And at times, have we been tested in certain areas because of injuries? Yeah, sure. But you can't over bloat something. And I think, there's something to be said for that theory that actually having and I know Arsenal don't have a small squad, but the line between having good depth and being over bloated is a very thin line. And if you cross that line, you end up with people being disengaged, not really connected. And that can breed a culture, if you like, and a feeling within the camp that you just don't want as well as a manager. Scott, we'll wrap up with some predictions. We can do two predictions if you want. We can do one head, one heart. Let's start with heart because it's more fun.
If I'm going to go heart, Harry, and you're giving me two options, I'm going to say United win 2-1. But I know that's not going to happen. That's all heart. If a realistic heart is, I think, look, Liverpool showed a few weeks ago you can go to Arsenal and frustrate them, and some might even say Liverpool were unlucky on the day and they took a point. And I think United can go out there and achieve that. Like a 1-1 draw, I don't think is terrible for Arsenal. I think it's a good result for United as well. Maybe if it is 1-1 going into 80 minutes or whatever, then is anybody really going to bat an eyelid at that? I think it works for United. Maybe Arsenal do want to go and win and cement that statement, make that statement that this is our title. And I think you'll win the title anyway, personally. Heart, it depends. Heart says, if I'm really going out there, I'm believing in the Carrick, uplift. Can they go out there and nick it? Look, it's not going to happen, is it? 1-1 draw with heart. But I think Arsenal win, personally. It'd be narrow, though. I think United give a good account of themselves, but Arsenal nick it. Set piece, probably. I'm
going to go, head says 1-0 to the Arsenal. Late goal off of someone's backside. Heart says 3-0 Arsenal. I feel like if we get an early goal and it becomes a bit of a basketball match, I feel like we're equipped actually a lot better than other teams. Only when Declan Rice is playing, by the way, to deal with those basketball type games, because we've got two centre halves that you can leave and say it's on you. And they're good enough to do that. And you've got Timber there and whoever else plays in that defense. I think sometimes when we play that type of game, and we saw it for a period in the first half at Inter, if Declan Rice isn't in the team, we're a bit too easy to run through. And that was the case in that Villa game that you referenced as well. If Declan Rice is there with his mobility and ability to eat up the ground, we're fine. But without him, there is a bit of a vulnerability there. I think we need the kind of result. And obviously the result in Milan was great in the Champions League. We're 7 from 7. It's fantastic. But we need a Premier League result against the side that there is that historic rivalry with, that there is that bit of needle with going into the game. We need that kind of uplifting result just to restore people's confidence after a couple of disappointing results, that we are ready to go and win the Premier League title this year. So it's a big opportunity for these players. Go out there and take it, and that's the thing. But it won't be easy. I just think it's one of those games that has the potential to go in so many different ways. It's a tough one to predict, isn't it? It really is.
One thing I can't say, Harry, is we've done lots of shows in the past and had lots of discussions at different points in Arsenal's progression, and there's always been a time to point and laugh. Nobody can do that. I can't do that now. You know, I think I've actually picked Arsenal to win. Yeah,
if we fluff it, you can.
Well, yes, potentially, but I still think you win the league anyway. Like I've actually picked Arsenal to win the league for the last 3 years. It's overdue, and look, I think really the opportunity's there. I don't think any teams around you really are equipped to overturn that lead either. So I think you can afford to slip up once or twice. It's just the biggest enemy that Arsenal have this year is Arsenal.
Yeah, the biggest enemy is that anxiety that I think you feel it in the fans, right? You feel it in the fans, you feel it in the stadium at times. But I think at times you see it on the pitch as well. And I suppose that's natural when you haven't got over the line yet. I suppose that's natural when you've not quite achieved what it is that you're vying for. So I get it. But at some point, someone needs to stand up and go, let's just do it. Let's make it happen. And I'm looking at certain players for that. I'm not looking at everybody. I'm looking at your Sakas. I'm looking at your Rices. I'm looking at these guys to produce those moments that just, you know, at the end of the day, restore that belief and maybe just give us that little nudge in the right direction that we need. Because I still think we're on our way, but I think we've slowed down a little bit, and we almost need. It's like, you know, if you're rowing a boat and you row for a bit and the boat starts rowing, it starts traveling, but there comes a point where it starts to slow down and you need that push again. I think we need that little push once more. But yeah, Scott, it's been an absolute pleasure, mate. Thank you so much for joining me. I've linked your channel in the description. Let people know what you're up to, where they can find it. There's a lot of people in this live chat that are 90 min old school viewers, so I'm sure they'll be interested in what you're up to and how they can follow you. So make sure you give yourself a plug.
Yeah, thanks, Harry. It's always a pleasure to jump on. I do see the comments by the side of me as well. Jokes about it. Did I see an 8-2? Come on, that's not going to happen. Hopefully, surely not. But no, it's
in my life. Easy.
I was actually playing golf that day. I actually missed the game. I had to go watch it back. I always remember that. But yeah, Harry, thanks for having me. Always a pleasure. Worked together for many years, and always a pleasure to chat to you. You can catch me. I take a big example. Harry is a big example for me, actually, in terms of like getting a podcast together. And I follow you, and obviously know that you've been doing this for a long time. A really good example to follow, but for United. So if there's, you know, a United interest, if there's any United fans in the chat or whatever, and you want to have a new Manchester United podcast to listen to, I do try, and naturally I've always been like that. Never too high, never too low, not over sensationalized or whatever, which I think aligns with you as well. So that's my approach. Yeah, the link's in the description. Please subscribe to the channel if you'd like to do so. And I'm on socials as well, __ Scott Saunders on most of those, and just doing my bit, you know, trying to make my way.
Make sure you go and check it out. Make sure you subscribe. And also, myself and Scott, we did a feature for the Premier League earlier this week, and that's going to be aired on the Premier League preview show, which is on TV in the UK tonight. It's probably on TV in other parts of the world as well, but I don't know the schedule. I know it's on TNT Sports today, I think at 6:30, Scott. And I know that it's on Sky Sports Premier League a little bit later on, around about 8:30, 9 o'clock. So go and check that out as well. Yeah,
I didn't actually know when it was going out, so thanks for.
There you go. Yeah, they normally put those out on a Friday, but yeah, people around the world will see it, of course. But here in the UK, I've always wondered when they go out, and I've clocked in recent months, actually, when I've done a few of these, that the Premier League preview show that they put out, it goes across all the rights holders, right? So it's on Sky. It'll be on TNT as well. Check it out. Thank you all so much. Don't forget to leave a like on your way out if you haven't done so already. Subscribe to the channel if you're new. Check us out on Patreon if you like. You'll get additional content. You'll get every episode that we do ad-free. Plus, you get to become a part of our Discord server, which is great fun. Yeah, I'll see you all very, very soon. Until the next one, take care of yourselves. My thanks to Scott again. Make sure you subscribe to his channel. All the best. Goodbye.
Chronicles of a Gooner. Like and subscribe. Chronicles of a Gooner. Harry, send me you time. Come on, you gunners.